How do you do? Jen and Cam feel it would be unkind to present this program without a friendly word of warning. We are about to unfold our true crime podcast, a podcast of lifelong friends who seek to examine crimes which were committed without reckoning upon God. The discussion will be frank, and the subject matter will be of a grim and violent nature. I think it will thrill you. It might even horrify you. So, if there are young children listening, or if you feel unwilling to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to, well, we've warned you.
Well, hello, Jen.
Hey, Cam, how are you?
I am stupendous. How are you?
I am fantastic. It has been quite the fun-filled week for me. We are recording this on the Saturday before Easter. Yeah, it's been very busy for us. My daughter had prom.
Woo, she looks so
very first
pretty.
prom. I know, it was exciting.
That is exciting.
But, yeah. And
if we could all be that young and that pretty, whatever.
But anyway, I have got a son, this bastard, I'm telling you. I had briefly mentioned him in episode or day 8 of The Nightmare Before Christmas. This past coming Christmas. And I said I'd cover him, and so this is the week that we're covering him. That we are covering him. I can't speak.
Okay.
So, are you ready?
I am so ready. Let's hear it.
Now, takes place in Belgium, and I try my best to speak the names correctly. If I do not have them correctly, I apologize. I actually should put that disclaimer on almost everything that I do, but here we go. I was
just thinking, honestly, though, you do way better than I do. So
I try. I always write everything out phonically. So
let's hear it.
On the morning of May 28th, 1996, in Tournai, Belgium, 12-year-old Sabine Dardenne got onto her new green bike. It was a first communion gift from her grandfather, and waved goodbye to her father and left for school. She had just passed a friend's house when she heard a car behind her, so she moved over to the side of the road. She noticed the sound was coming from a beat-up white camper van with stickers over the windows and yellow and brown checked curtains. As the van pulled up beside her, she saw the side door slide open and a man lean out. The man then grabbed her off her bike and threw her and her things inside the van. In less than a minute, Sabine had been kidnapped by 2 strange men. The man wrapped her up in a blanket and forced pills into her mouth. Sabine started screaming and demanded to know what was going on. The man told her to be quiet and she wouldn't get hurt. While Sabine tried to free herself from the blanket, she took the pills out of her mouth and hid them. The man then took a cloth and dabbed it in what was most likely chloroform and put it over her face. There must not have been a lot of chloroform on the cloth because it didn't really knock her out. It just made her a little bit dizzy, and she fought him. When the dizziness kind of got out of control, she quieted down, and that's when he gave her more pills to swallow, and she cried. 2 hours later, the kidnappers had reached their destination. The men ordered Sabine to get in a very small metal trunk. Later, when Sabine was let out, the driver was gone, and it was just her and the greasy creep in a house that she had never been to before. She called the man a greasy creep because she said, quote, his hair was oily enough to fry chips in.
Ew.
The man would later give her his name, but she would refuse to use it. She never called him by his name. Ever. She called him you. She was quite feisty. I like her. I like her a lot. Soon, Sabine found herself upstairs in a bedroom, being ordered to take off her clothes and get into a bunk bed under a blanket. Her captor placed a chain around her neck and secured it to the bed, then set a bucket to be used as a chamber pot next to her. In the first few days, the greasy creep explained what had happened. His boss wanted revenge for something that her father, an ex-policeman, had done. They were going to hold her hostage until $1 million ransom had been paid. She would be dead meat if the money wasn't paid. The man then took her off her chains and led her to a different room where he took nude photos of her and then raped her. Sabine would later call that room the Calgary room, which I was told is French for agony, but it also is a place where Jesus, Happy Easter, was crucified on the cross. So it's a place of pain and suffering. So I guess that works too. The man would tell her later that her family had just simply refused to pay the ransom, and his boss said that Sabine would have to be liquidated. They had to get rid of her. So the man said he really liked her and he offered to help. He told her that if she really wanted to live, that she would have to let him hide her, and she could never go back home because his boss would find out. Well, of course, with facing life or death, the little 12-year-old agreed. She, of course, chose life. And he told her how lucky she was that he was the one that had taken her, because others would have just killed her. But not him. He saved her. He was her savior. The greasy creep then moved Sabine into her hiding place. It was a dungeon of sorts. It was where an old water tank had been dug out of the cellar. The place was 7 feet long, 3 feet wide, and 5 feet high, and it was hidden behind a false wall. The door was covered up by shelves containing plastic containers and bottles on the outside, so you couldn't tell that there was any kind of opening at all. And to open it, you would have to pull the shelves out and then pull it up by lifting it up. Sabine was told not to make any noise or she would be killed. And if she heard anyone coming into the house and they heard her down there, she was going to be killed. She would have to be killed. His boss would find out and he would kill her. So she was to remain quiet until he came to the cage himself and said he was there. Until she heard his voice, she was not allowed to make a sound. She was once again chained to a bed with a rotting mattress, only being let out when the greasy man would rape her. He would bring her up, let her eat. He would rape her. He would photograph her. He would take videotapes of her and then send her back down. And the dungeon basically was windowless and it was dark. Once that door shut, it was dark. She had a small lamp that gave very little light.
That's disgusting. Seriously.
Oh, it's something. It gets worse.
Oh, no.
Sometimes the man would leave her for days at a time with nothing but canned food, bread that would become moldy very quickly, and water in a jerry can, which is kind of like a gas tank, a gas can. You know what I mean? She said that she would spend her time either the water was she would ration it out so closely that she didn't know. Sometimes she could drink it, and sometimes she'd wanted to clean herself because she was filthy. Like the only time she would get a bath is when he bathed her, and he would scrub her until she was just bright red, scrub her skin off. She would spend her days doing work in her school workbooks or writing letters to her family. In those letters, she begged them to come get her. She told them that what was happening, and she swore she would be a good kid, and she would make her better grades. They just needed to let her come home, and she would prove what a good girl she was.
That's so sad.
She would then give the greasy creep those letters to mail, but he never did read them, or he never did mail them. He would only read them. And when Sabine would ask if her mother had replied, he would fake the mother's responses. Like, she'd go, "So how's such and such?" And he'd go, "Oh, your mother said that they had to get rid of all your stuff because, blah, blah, blah. They don't care about you." I mean, she's constant. Poor kid. Horrible. Sabine also kept a diary marking the days that the man was gone and when he would return. She would also mark an X on days that he hurt her and 2 X's when he really, really hurt her. On August 10th, at about 75 days after Sabine was first kidnapped, Sabine was brought up from her underground prison. The greasy man had told her that he had brought her a friend. On the bed, unconscious, lay 14-year-old Leticia Delhay. And this pretty much killed Sabine because days prior, she was just kind of whining that she was so lonely and she just wanted to go home just for a minute to see her family. She just wanted a friend. She just needed something. And then lo and behold, a couple days later, here lay another girl, and she realized what she had done, and she totally blamed herself for Leticia's kidnapping. 2 days later, Leticia was put into the small, cramped space along with Sabine. Leticia told Sabine that she was walking home from the swimming pool in Beartree when a white van pulled up, and a man asked her why the town was so busy, what was going on in the town square. Leticia told him that it was because of a motorcycle race that was being held. And the man acted like he didn't hear her quite, so he motioned her to come closer. When she got close to the man, he grabbed her and threw her in the van, and then, of course, force-fed her the pills. Later, Leticia would tell her that, you know what, I kind of recognize you. And she's like, oh, we never lived anywhere close. We didn't go to the same school. And Leticia would say that it was because she saw the flyers, the missing posters that Sabine's parents had put around town looking for her. But Sabine never believed her because they didn't pay the ransom, right? The man told her they didn't pay the ransom, that they didn't want him anymore. And she knew. I mean, her family knew where she was because she told him in the letters that were mailed home to them. So she did not believe Leticia that her parents were looking for her. On the afternoon of August 15th, the girls were startled by a loud noise. Scared that the boss and his gang were upstairs and knew that they were being hidden, they crawled into the bed and hid under the blanket. They knew that they were about to be killed. Sabine tried to tell Leticia that it was more than likely that they had come for her since she had been there the longest and possibly worn out of her welcome, like Marc might not want her anymore. So she was pretty sure that it was just her that they were going to kill, and Leticia would be saved. She'd be fine. They listened as the shelves were cleared off. They could hear the shelves of all the bottles and the plastics being cleared off the shelf of their door. Remember, it was a false door. And they were terrified. In the entire 80 days that she had been held captive, she had never heard that many people in the house before. Over the noise, they heard the voice of the greasy man telling them that he was here. And Sabine screamed that she wasn't going to come out. She was not going to come out. When the door opened up, a group of men surrounded the opening. Leticia immediately recognized a policeman from Bear Tree, and they were free. Sabine, who had been held captive for so long, was brainwashed. She believed that her captor was the only one who cared for her. She didn't trust anybody. She looked at her captor and asked him if she could leave. When he nodded his head, she got up and walked out the door, and she even thanked him with a kiss on his cheek as she left. Stockholm Syndrome.
Oh, totally.
Heartbreaking. It kills me. So how were they found, you asked? Well, you didn't, but I'm going to tell you.
I did ask that. Actually, I was still thinking about the Stockholm thing, but go ahead. Yes.
I can't imagine how scared they were hearing all this noise, just knowing that it was hounded at them, that if they made any noise and if anybody knew that they were down there, that they would instantly be killed.
And I think they were just trying to get out.
They were 12 and 14. I mean, they
do what you need to do.
Right. So on the day Leticia was kidnapped, a nun in the area happened to be looking out her window when she heard a vehicle with a broken exhaust system. It was really loud and it was very annoying, and she just was not happy with the whole situation. And she remembered a white van driving by. Another witness, a boy, recalled seeing a loud white Renault van with stickers covering the windows. And he wrote down the first 3 letters of the license plate, which police traced back to 39-year-old Marc Dutroux, a known car thief and convicted rapist. Sad note here, when Sabine went missing, police gathered all the names of the sexual predators in the area, and Marc Dutroux's name was on the list, but nobody followed up on the lead. They completely dropped the ball. And as you will find throughout this whole ordeal, the police completely dropped the ball.
Shocker.
Marc Dutroux was born in 1956 in Ixelles, Belgium. He was the oldest of 5 kids, and he claimed to have been frequently beaten by his father. Later reports say his father beat him because he felt that Marc may not have been his biological son. His parents then divorced in 1971, and he went to live with his mother. At 16, Marc left school and started to date an older man, but he says it was only for the money. It was the cash. He wanted the cash. After a string of factory jobs, Marc began to do petty crimes with burglary and car theft. In 1983, he married a woman and had 2 kids, but she divorced him because he was abusing her. And after the divorce, he married one of his mistresses, 23-year-old Michelle Martin, and fathered 3 more children. In 1989, Marc was sentenced to 3.5 years for kidnapping and the rapes of 5 girls ages 11 through 19. While he was in prison, he was said to have talked about kidnapping girls, and he wanted to create an underground city in a mine shaft, and it would be his own personal utopia. He also talked about trafficking young girls, too. Mark
POS. POS.
Mark only served 3 years of his sentence, and he was released on good behavior. It seemed that he was a master manipulator, and he kind of made people feel sorry for him because of his lousy upbringing. And I think people mostly focused on his car theft instead of like the actual rapes of young girls.
Wow.
And here's a fun fact. His wife, Michelle, was an accomplice to the whole thing. She helped him along with another accomplice. Michelle received 5 years, and the third accomplice received 6.5 years.
Unreal.
The other accomplice told authorities that there was 2 more girls that had been kidnapped and raped, but those girls were never found. So, little
were
fact.
They
go ahead.
Murdered, or do you think
they don't know
they
if
just didn't want to come
these girls were just kidnapped, taken to a second location, raped, and then set free? They don't know if these other women ever came, or these girls, I should say, they were girls, ever came forward. That they might not have.
Yeah.
So, little info here. When Mark was in prison, he complained about not being able to sleep, so he was given pills to help him sleep. He didn't take them. He kind of pocketed them. So, wonder what he did with those later for these girls. Like, he drugged the girls.
Yeah, of course they did. Yep.
So, let's go back to his arrest on August 13, 1996. After Mark's name came up when they ran the plates, officers were dispatched to all of 7 of Mark's houses. Yes, you heard that right. He had 7 homes. They were all kind of dumps, but
why?
They were home.
Did he have money?
He made money through crimes. He was a very good car thief. Supposedly, he was buying very expensive luxury cars, or not buying, I'm sorry, he was stealing luxury cars and then selling them in like the Czech Republic. And he was selling them other countries. Yeah. He also did a little bit of drug dealing, and he did a little mugging. He also mugged people. I mean, he was an all-around kind of guy.
He was an all-around kind of guy.
He wasn't a specialist. He dabbled in a little bit of everything.
In the bad way. Yeah. He's a keeper.
So he is. They were dispatched to all 7 of his homes, like I said, and in his home at Sarlabouzier.
Boozy as in bougie.
Like in boozy, like you drink the booze. She's feeling a little bit boozy. Mark and his wife, along with the white man, were found in his home in Sarlabouzier, and the 2 were arrested right on the spot. And supposedly just in time, because Mark was getting ready to change those old license plates. Another man, an accomplice by the name of Michael Lalievois, a petty thief and drug addict, was brought in for questioning too. He actually ended up being the driver with Leticia and Sabine. All 3 were interrogated by the police, and they all maintained they had nothing to do with Leticia's disappearance, because of course they didn't. Lalievois stated that he actually wasn't with Mark that day, and without any evidence, they had to let him go. But not long after he left the building, a witness came forward and told police that they saw Mark and Lalievois carrying a child wrapped in a basement, and they went into Mark's house on the day that Leticia went missing. Lalievois was immediately rearrested. When told of this new witness account, Mark started confessing that he did speak with Leticia. You know, she just wanted to get away from his parents. So, blah, 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 that he wanted to protect her from prostitution rings. So he took her and blah, blah, blah. Just lies. Nothing but lies. But after days of building Mark's trust and stroking that little ego of his, Mark told police investigator Michael Dumoulin, quote, "I will give you 2 girls." And that's when he pointed to Sabine Dardenne's missing poster. And of course, the investigator was shocked. He was not expecting Sabine to be anywhere near this disappearance of Leticia. Mark went with the police to his house in Marcinelle, and Leticia and Sabine were finally freed. Leticia had been held hostage for 6 days, and Sabine 80. Close to 3 months, that girl was held in the basement.
Real. 80 days?
She was feisty. She was feisty. Like, she would yell at him constantly.
You would have to be to last that long.
Yeah,
seriously.
She was feisty. Like I said, I love her. I read her book, I Choose to Live, and I love her. She's
Love
amazing.
her.
Strong girl. Woman now, but strong. When police searched the house where the girls were held captive, they found more than 300 tapes containing child pornography, some with Marc himself, magazines and a gun, and children's clothing. Of course, the news of the two missing girls was widely reported in the news. The people of Belgium were overjoyed that the girls were found. Seems like in the early 90s, there was quite a problem with girls going missing. 15 had been kidnapped within 6 years. Or I'm sorry, with kids going missing, 15 had been kidnapped within 6 years. And that's not even counting missing kids. Police really didn't treat the reports of missing children very seriously. And you know that the first 24 hours are very critical. In fact, police told one parent of a missing child that they treat any report of a missing kid like they would treat a mugging or somebody being robbed. It wasn't a priority.
Oh.
Now, police suspected Dutroux had been responsible for more missing people, so they kept interrogating him. And after 2 days, Dutroux confessed on taking 2 more girls, Melissa Rousseau and Julie Lejeune, both 8 years old. They're babies.
Unreal.
A year earlier, on June 24th, 1995, near Liège, Julie had gone to Melissa's house in the afternoon. Around 5 a.m., they asked Melissa's mother if they could go for a walk, and they were never seen again. The parents were hysterical and started searching everywhere for the girls before they finally called police. The police arrived and took the girls' descriptions, and there was even special officers called to the house later that evening. But as the days went on, it seemed to the parents that nothing was being done to find the girls. 2 weeks after the girls disappeared with no major investigation launched into the girls' disappearance, the parents took measures into their own hands. And when they complained to the police, like I said, they were told that missing girls really aren't a priority. I'm sorry. We're working on it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's... The Rousseaus and the Legends made posters in different languages and posted them everywhere. If they knew somebody was going on vacation to another country, they would have posters made in that language and have that person take those posters to the country. They said that he had posters in every airport imaginable. I mean, these girls, the missing posters of these girls were everywhere. And because of the posters, journalists and the media started to become interested in the story. And they started to write about this problem that Belgium was having with all these children going missing. And this, of course, put pressure on the police. But didn't seem like they were really too bothered. Nothing was getting done. 3 months after the girls vanished from their walk, the Rousseaus and the Lejeunds had had enough, and they went on TV and vented their frustration. They accused authorities of keeping information about the case from them, and basically they just blamed them for being incompetent. That's no excuse. They were just incompetent. Mrs. Rousseau actually pleaded to the chief of police who was there with them on the TV show. She said somebody might be hurting them. Maybe they've already been hurt. Can't we get on and do something more quickly? For pity's sake. And then the chief of police turned to her and said, "What, are you talking to me?" Seriously. I mean, there's a clip of it. Yeah,
Wow. No words. No words, honestly.
The parents later held a press conference and offered a reward for information to find the girls. Yet the phones remained silent. There was no information. Nobody called in with any information on these girls. Just quiet. Nothing. Now, the Rousseaus and the Lejeunds were really not off base with the whole incompetency thing. 2 years prior, a police informant went to the police, and he told them that a man by the name of Marc Dutroux had hired him to do some odd jobs around his houses. The informant claimed that Marc had been digging out a water tank in one of the cellars of a house that he owned. Mm-hmm. And when he asked Marc what he was going to do with it, Marc said that he thought it would be a good place to hide children until he could send them abroad.
Is that normal? Like, do people think that? I think not.
I don't think they do.
No,
the informant also told authorities that Marc had offered him 250,000 francs to kidnap girls. You need money? I could get you a job for $250,000. I'm going to show you how to kidnap girls. He said it was really easy. All you had to do is throw your arm around their neck, put a hand over their mouth, and throw them in a van. They're probably not going to fight you, but if they do, you can even knock them out if you need to. Of course, the informant refused the officer. And of course, Mark called him an asshole for not wanting to do it. But the police did nothing with this information at all. They sat on it. They should have said it to every police department in the country, like be on the lookout. This guy's a piece of shit. If you have anybody missing, maybe you should look into this guy. Nothing. They sat on that information.
That happens a lot, but come on.
Well, in fact,
come on now.
The informant, when he saw the parents of Melissa and Julie begging for the police to help them on TV, they just please help us. The informant went to the police and said, I really want to tell them about this guy. But the police firmly told him, do not do it. You're going to be interfering with the investigation and it's going to cause more problems. The girls will never be found and it'll be your fault. It's even said, like Marc Dutroux's mother actually claimed that in 1995, she went to the police to tell them that her own son was holding 2 young girls in his basement. Nothing was done.
Do you think people just don't believe that? Or do you think they...
It's kind of an outlandish story, but you would think somebody would sure as hell need to check into it.
Right?
You would think so. I mean, if you get a couple people, one person saying that, you'd probably go, 2 people, you'd say, yeah, let's go check it out.
If one person said that, one person said that, I'd be like, well, we have to investigate. Because that's weird. I don't say that. Do you say it? No.
Now we're back to August of 1996, and Marc Dutroux had just told the police where to find the girls. They were buried in the garden at one of his houses in Charleroi, which was 50 miles from where they were last seen. In fact, one of the documentaries I saw said that the police, the family was saying how the police had the 2 families together and they called it, then said, we're going to dig here. And then called a little bit later and said, hey, we found a leg. We don't know who it belongs to, though, but we found a leg. And then 10 minutes later, they called back and said, yep, that's them. I mean, just crude and just unprofessional.
I keep saying that, but you can't make this up. Seriously.
Also found with the bodies of Julie and Melissa was an accomplice of Mark's, Bernard Weinstein. Weinstein had been wanted in connection to a stolen van that Mark had kind of been a part of too. And Mark didn't want to be implicated. So what did he do? He drugged Weinstein and then buried him alive in the garden.
Gross.
And it didn't really help because Mark would be arrested later that month for that theft. Autopsy revealed that Melissa had been raped over a prolonged period of time, but there was no DNA to prove that it was actually done by Dutroux, or anyone for that matter. Mrs. Russo begged to see Melissa's body. She even brought her lawyer to the police, but she was refused. They claimed that the law just wouldn't allow her to do so. The Russos weren't even allowed to identify their own daughter. Marc Dutroux did. Insult to injury, the man that killed her daughter was the one that was able to identify it, not her husband.
Why did they do that?
I don't know. I don't mean to
laugh, but that's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Been so frustrated with police work in my entire life than reading this story. It's bizarre. I don't understand. It was found out that the girls had died from starvation, and Mark told him that he had them when he was arrested for that car theft, and he had told his wife, Michelle, to not only feed the German Shepherd dogs that they had, but make sure that Melissa and Julie were fed too.
Like their dogs.
Yes, so Michelle, his wife, knew that the girls were down there. Now, Michelle fed the dogs, but she claimed that she was just too afraid to go into the dungeon to feed these little 8-year-old girls.
Dungeon?
Mm-hmm.
Dungeon? Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Marc told police that when he was let out in February, he found that one of the girls had already perished. He claimed that one was kind of still alive, and he tried to save her life, but to no avail. He proceeded to then place their bodies into trash bags and put them in the freezer for over a week. Quote, I had other things to do. Just another little side note, when Marc was arrested for the car theft, the police were sent to search his house, possibly for things, and the detective in charge brought along a locksmith, and the locksmith heard screaming, children screaming. He kept saying the screams are coming from inside the house. They're here, and the detective's like, no, they're outside.
That is a horror movie. The screams are coming from inside the house, and you don't.
The detective's like, no, they're outside. They're not. And the locksmith's is like, no, they're coming. They're like, no, they searched the house, but they were behind that false wall. They couldn't see it.
Could no one hear that? Seriously? Come on.
There were also videotapes recovered in that search, but nobody ever watched the tapes. And if they would have watched the tapes, they would have saw Marc building his dungeon.
So disgusting.
So with this knowledge, the people in Belgium were horrified. A couple days ago, they were ecstatic that Sabine and Leticia were found, but now, days later, 2 young girls were found dead, and they were killed by the same man that had taken Sabine and Leticia. The girls were given a state funeral, which had never been done before for, I guess, non-politicians or government officials. I'm thinking somebody felt guilty. Thousands of people lined up in the streets to see the funeral procession, and hundreds more were gathered in the church for service. And even though it was a state funeral, the Belgian royal family were told by the girls' parents that they were not wanted there. The parents felt that they hadn't been interested in the girls' disappearance when it happened. And now that they had been found, now that the girls had been found dead, now the royal family seemed to care, which before they didn't. So they didn't want the royal family to have any involvement at the funeral. Police and politicians were also asked to show some humility and to keep a distance from the family during the funeral. The feeling was that they were responsible for what had happened to Melissa and Julie. If they would have done what they should have done when they needed to do it, Melissa and Julie may have been saved.
I think so.
I think it's a great possibility that it could have been. I mean, they had police somewhere had the information of Marc Dutroux in his little dungeon. 2 weeks after the girls were laid to rest, Marc Dutroux gave police another bombshell. He and his accomplice, Michael Lalievois, had taken 2 girls.
That's really good. That's really good.
Thanks. They had taken 2 girls in August 23rd, just months after Julie and Melissa were abducted. Anne Marchal, 17, and Effie Lambrex, 19, had gone to the Belgian coast in Ostende, I think, with some friends from a theater group. The girls had decided to go see a hypnotist perform one evening, and they were even called on stage. There's video. They bought like the little CD of them on stage. Very cute. But after the show, the girls were waiting for the bus when Marc and Michael grabbed them and put them in the trunk of their car and drugged them. On the way back to Brussels, the car broke down. The men took the girls, wrapped in a blanket, and put them in a ditch. And Marc left Michael to watch over the girls, and he set off to find a garage to help with the car. Not long after Marc left, he came across 2 Irishmen sleeping in their car in a car park. Marc offered the men about 20 pounds to take them to his house, and they accepted it. And when they got back to Charleroi, the man slept in the house while Marc made his way back to pick up Anne and Effie. Once again, Anne and Effie's parents called the police, but nothing was done. Not even a report was taken, and in fact, the police point blank told the parents that the girls had probably run off with boys and they'd be back in a few days.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
When Anne's mother said that she believed that there was foul play involved, the police told her that she just watched too much Miami Vice.
Okay. Yep.
And then she went on to tirade and said, well, maybe I can do your job better because you need to watch it so you could do your job.
Well, Miami Vice back in the 80s. Today it's Criminal Minds and CSI.
Right, exactly. Yeah. SVU. And just like the Rousseaus and the Lejeans, they were not giving any updates on their daughter's disappearance. Mr. Marchal even went to a huge newspaper and begged them to put pictures of his missing daughter in an issue. Just the front page, anywhere. Just put his picture. Let the world know that she's missing. But they too laughed and said that she was probably just partying out with boys and she'll be back. Don't worry. But unfortunately, the girls were taken to the house in Charleroi and they were kept upstairs while Julie and Melissa were in the dungeon. It's believed that the girls were kind of hard for Dutroux to handle, probably because they were older and they were not as susceptible of being brainwashed like the younger girls were. In fact, they tried to escape a few times. Marc led police to one of his houses in Jumet, the one where Weinstein had been staying. And under the shed, about 20 feet down, lay the bodies of Anne and Fea. They had been drugged and buried alive, just like Bernard Weinstein. Around this time, Dutroux implicated another man by the name of Michael Nuhul. He was a Brussels businessman who was rumored to have held sex parties, lots of orgies, if you will. Marc claimed that he would kidnap the girls for Nuhul, and that Nuhul was the one that would organize the whole thing. And in fact, he stated that he himself, Marc, was just a peon used in this huge, powerful pedophile sex ring. And to this day, many people do believe that Marc and Nuhul were planning a human trafficking operation between Europe, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic. Investigating Judge Jean-Marc Connerat was brought into the investigation to build a case against Marc Dutroux. He promptly arrested people associated with Marc, including Michael Nuhul. 11 victims of Marc Dutroux came forward, and they would be called the ex-witnesses. One, a woman by the name of Regina Loof, or as she was known in this case as X1, came forward saying that she had seen both Dutroux and Nuhul at sex parties. Seems that Regina had been sold to a man by her parents when she was around 11 years old. Her grandmother was like some kind of madam. She was a madam. She owned, And this man that she was sold to took her to these parties where children would be tortured, raped, and murdered. She claims that she met businessmen, politicians, and men in the justice system. And along with Nuhul that she saw there at these parties, Marc was there. She saw Marc, and he was the one that supplied the drugs and the girls. Regina Loof said that these parties, quote, it was highly organized, big business, blackmail. There was lots of money involved. Regina Loof also told of an unsolved murder of a 14-year-old by the name of Christine Van Heef in 1984. And she talked about the murder. She saw it happen. And then when they went back and looked at autopsy reports, totally corroborated with her account of what happened. And she knew things that had never been made public. In October of 1996, Judge Connerat was removed from the investigation. Seems he had gone to dinner, a fundraiser for the families of the Dutroux victims. And while he was there, he was given a pin and some dinner. People thought this was a bribe. I shouldn't say people. Government officials took this that he was given a bribe, and they accused him of being biased in the situation. So he was removed. And this, of course, sent outrage across the country. The people of Belgium already felt that the politicians and police and the judicial systems were untrustworthy, especially in the light of all the errors in the Dutroux case, right? I mean, it's just been mess up after mess up after mess up.
I can't believe it went on this long, though. That's the thing.
There might be something to these little theories of a sex ring. We don't know. So the people took to the streets. And with Connerat being discharged, there was more distrust. People were getting really pissed and frustrated. So on October 20th, 1996, what is now known as the White March, 300,000 people took to the streets of Brussels to let the government know that they wanted better protection for the children of Belgium. Police and the justice system needed to pay more attention to children. I mean, no one thought their children was safe. They needed new laws. They needed new ways to protect the children. You shouldn't treat a child going missing as you would somebody getting mugged. It needs to be a priority. The people attending the march either wore something white. That's why it was called the White March. People either wore something white or they carried something white. Like there's tons of white balloons because white is a symbol of purity, innocence, and hope. Protesters also held signs that said, "Stop the cover-up." Many people felt that this was a big cover-up, that politicians were covering up these children being kidnapped and raped because of these official businessmen that were supposedly at these sex parties. Mm-hmm. So everybody, it was a mess. And I would have been a part of that march too, believe me. The main organizers of the group were Julie and Melissa's parents, as well as the mother of 12-year-old Elizabeth Brochet. Now, we talked about Elizabeth in the day 8 of the Nightmares Before Christmas. She would later be found to be a victim of the Ogre of Ardon, the Michael Fortuné, I believe, if I remember how to say his name right. So her body was found years later, but Marc Dutroux wasn't the one that took her. And not only was this march, but across the country, workers went on strike. Firemen even took their fire hoses and sprayed down the government buildings to symbolize the cleansing of government corruption. It was big. I mean, it wasn't just like a little small get-together. It was huge. The government did later announce a review of procedures, and they realized that they had to bring their policies up to date. They called for stricter rules for the early release of sex offenders, and they called for war on the child sex trade, which I hate those words are even strung together.
Thank you. That should have been done a long time ago, but we know. Whatever.
Now, it would take years before Marc would stand trial. In fact, in April of 1998, Marc was getting uncomfortably close to being released. His lawyers claimed that the amount of time that it was taking to build a case against him was a breach of the European Convention of Human Rights. Just a side note here, his first lawyer refused to defend him at all, claiming moral reasons. He said, quote, "I have a little girl of Julie and Melissa's age who has been really disturbed by these events, and I don't think she would have understood that her father was defending this man." So he's about to be released, but on a routine visit to the courthouse, Marc, who supposedly was one of the most guarded prisoners in Belgium at the time, escaped. He was on a routine visit to the courthouse, and somehow he escaped his guards.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Shocker.
Yes, of course, people uproar. The army was called in to search for him. And a mere 3 hours later, he was spotted close to the French border by a forest guard. He was later fined 80,000 Belgian francs for attacking police officers and for stealing a gun and a car in that escape. It was also around this time, you're going to love this.
Can't wait.
It was discovered that Dutroux had been writing letters to a 15-year-old girl for 2 years while he was in prison.
Yep.
Now, this, of course, didn't help the government squash any theories that there was a cover-up going on. And it did bring about a bunch of government resignations. A lot of people resigned because of this case. Mm-hmm. There's also reports of an earlier escape attempt. It seems that handcuff keys were found in a jar of salt that was close to where Marc was being held in prison. Yeah. But it was never proved, nor was it denied that he tried to do it or somebody was trying to help him. Remember, he's a master manipulator, and he was able to talk people into doing all sorts of things.
A lot more than he should have.
Mm-hmm. So finally, in March of 2004, Marc Dutroux, along with his wife and accomplices, Michael Lalievois.
You're doing really good on the names, I gotta be honest. You really are.
An accomplice, Michael Lalievois, and Michael Leroux would sit behind a bulletproof glass along with 2 armed guards for Belgium's trial of the century. Marc pled guilty to the murder of Bernard Weinstein, but he denied killing Julie, Melissa, and an FEA. In the trial, there was over 400,000 pages of evidence, along with close to over 400 witnesses to take the stand and to testify against Marc.
400?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how... Oh my goodness. Okay.
Along those witnesses were Sabine and Leticia. And when Sabine was asked why she wanted to testify, she said, quote, "I want to look Dutroux in the eyes and show him that despite of everything that he made me go through, I did not lose my mind."
Good for them. I don't think I'd be... would you?
It would be very hard, but I think after
it,
enough time had passed, she would become stronger. She was older, and
but
I'm telling you, she's a strong, feisty girl, woman. But I also want to mention that there was over 20 witnesses that died over the course of this investigation, which also strengthened...
Died from natural causes, I hope?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It also, this strengthens the theory that there is some kind of big pedophile ring that the government's kind of covering up. It's suspicious.
Don't get me started on that. I think that happens a lot more than we know.
The more I've read about this, the more I believe that there is something going on, or was, and still possibly is.
Yes,
and a lot of people, including Julie and Melissa's parents, believe that too. When Marc's wife, Michelle, took the stand, she apologized for starving the girls, saying, quote, "I know I have some responsibility in the death of Julie and Melissa. I was too scared to go down into the basement. I regret indefinitely what happened." She
regretted it, though, Jen. She regretted it. She said that. She regretted it.
Poor thing. I'm sorry for your regret. During the trial, the entire court, plus media, about 110 people, went to see where Marc had held the young girls he stole. The media reported that it was even unfit for animals. And Julie's father had gone there a few times, and he said, quote, "I've already been there several times, but it's important for me to come back. And every time I see Julie's name written in crayon on the wall." While she was held captive, she wrote her little name on the wall. Could you imagine? I'd lose it.
No, I can't. I would kill him in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. After about 4 months of trial, the middle of June, it was over, and the jury spent 3 days in deliberation, and they came back with the verdict. Michelle Martin was found guilty of the deaths of Melissa Russo and Julie Lejeune.
Thank you.
She was sentenced to 30 years in prison. She was released in 2012, which she only served 16 years of her sentence. And
why?
She was a good prisoner, I guess. Just remorseful.
Where is she now? Is she okay?
Well, now she lives under watchful eyes of nuns and her probation officers in a convent in southern Belgium.
Good.
She's not allowed any contact with the families of the victims.
Thank you. And bye-bye.
Michael Lalievois was sentenced to 25 years for helping with the kidnappings and amongst other charges. He was released in December of 2019 after serving 23 years. Michael Nuhul was acquitted of any kidnapping charges because there was lack of evidence, but he was sentenced to 5 years for drug trafficking. Marc, our buddy, Marc Dutroux, was sentenced to life imprisonment. And in 2013, after he heard that Michelle had got off on early release, he wanted it too.
Of course, duh.
He claimed he was no longer a threat to society, and besides...
a nice guy. He's just misunderstood. Seriously.
Yep. He said he would be monitored under house arrest. He'd have a ankle bracelet. He'd be fine. Yep.
Fine.
He,
totally
thank
fine.
God, was denied.
Thank you.
And he is currently in solitary confinement.
Good.
And they said that he probably would never be released. And I can imagine what would happen in Belgium. There would be chaos, an uprising, I believe, if he was ever let go. Because it's been said that the crimes of Marc Dutroux and his associates have traumatized the entire country more so than any other event since the Second World War.
Thank you.
It was so traumatizing, in fact, that around 1/3 of Belgians with the surname of Dutroux have filed to have their names changed.
Their last name changed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you got to remember, if you're in the States, over there, those Belgium, it's very, very, very tiny compared to us. So it'd be like a state, you know? So it'd be like their country is a state.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and these kidnappings were done 100, 150 miles apart. So, and they were like on the coast, on the left border, left-hand border, the right. I mean, that wasn't put together, but if the police would have only put out, watch out for this guy, or here's a suspect.
That is nothing.
No, nothing. I mean,
here in the States, it would be in the state, a state,
150 miles is, I don't know.
It's nothing.
But yeah,
Terrible.
The bastard. Actually, Belgium didn't have, they got rid of the death penalty, and there was actually talk to bring it back just because of him.
Just for this guy.
And I'm not opposed to
Can't
that.
say I'd be.
I mean, I don't really know how I feel about the death penalty, but I would say that I would feel okay with him.
Sometimes we've talked about this. Sometimes there's no fixing it. These people are damaged and to go.
And there's also, I didn't include this, but there's talk that his brother Henri killed himself. And
because was he in on it, or was he like he couldn't live with it? It was
claimed that he had an incestuous affair with his mother, but the mother totally denied it, or has denied it. So I don't know if that was a little fake thing Marc made up for sympathy or what. But all I know is Marc is a complete bastard. And he's right where he needs to be.
It's not exactly like he's a nice guy.
In fact, I wouldn't have minded if he's put in the dungeon where he kept all those girls. And if you look at it, it's horrifying. I mean, I couldn't imagine
I don't
how
even know.
small of a space that is.
And actually, you know what? I'm with you. He should be put down there too. That little loser wouldn't even last a week. Not at all. The way that he left those girls.
Egotistical,
ninny moo moo
piece of shit. Yeah, I mean, and granted, there's so much more to the story. There really is, but I couldn't put it all in here. But there's some great documentaries you can watch that I'll list in the show notes.
You read a couple books. There you go.
Well, the book I Choose Life by Sabine Dardenne. She goes into her whole 80 days. And then the aftermath in her life and her first boyfriend afterwards. It's very great. It's a good read. It's translated from French, I believe. And so a lot of things I believe gets lost in translation, but you still get the gist of it. But you feel horrified for this little girl, and you feel her loneliness, thinking that her family has totally betrayed her and just left her for dead. That they just abandoned her.
But they haven't. But that's the thing.
But
they don't.
That's what she thinks.
Yeah. That's the maneuver they use.
I don't know, but I suggest watching it to get a little bit more of the situation. I wouldn't go so far to say that there's not an entire sex ring around the nation where kids are
it
trafficked.
Happens everywhere.
I know.
Here in the U.S., it happens everywhere. Everywhere.
Yep. There was
disgusting.
just a ring taken down in New York that affected us here in Missouri. I think there was 10 states that they trafficked girls to.
I have lots of words, but I am not going to share them because it probably would not be nice. That was a really good case, Jen. Very good. It went a little long, not long, but like it's a decent number. So there you go. Also, do we have any?
We do have a promo. We are friends at our friends from Nefarious Nightmares. They're part of the Darkcast network, which our really good friend CJ is a part of. CJ from Beyond the Rainbow, and
CJ from Beyond the Rainbow,
right? And JT and Mike from Brew Crime, all of our good friends. So be sure to check them out.
Yes, check them out. Also, you know what? They might want to check out. I'm just saying.
What?
August. What happens
in Dallas?
August? Yeah, that'd be it.
What? Tell us what's going on in August in Dallas.
We are going to the True Crime Podcast Festival. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
No way.
Super fun. Yeah, we are. It is. I don't know the dates.
It's August 26th, I believe. 26th, 27th, 28th. One of those days.
Here's the funny part. Haven't asked off for work, and that's the first week of school.
No, you'll be fine. Just will happen you're not going to show up.
I'm sick. Exactly. I'm already sick right now.
We will really be there, and we can't wait to meet you. So you can go to truecrimepodcastfestival.com and get your tickets and come swing by and see us.
You guys, it is so much fun. It really is so much.
There's going to be so many podcasters there to meet that you will see some of your favorites, and you will also find new ones. Some of your favorites being us, mind you.
I think we are their only favorite if they're listening right now, let's be honest. But yeah, no, it's super fun. Like you can come and sit and have drinks and food and all that kind of stuff. It's so fun. It's super fun. So yes.
But anyway, that's it for us. I hope everyone had a great Easter. We will be celebrating ours tomorrow.
I won't.
Tomorrow, because today's Saturday in our world right now. Camille's getting her colonoscopy done on Monday so she can't enjoy.
Who the heck
take on Easter?
Like, why did they not tell me that this was the Monday after Easter?
Because it is your responsibility to know that. And you know what? This year,
schedule this. When they schedule it in January, December, I don't know. Okay,
I know. Sure. Believe me, I get it. I totally forgot Easter was this weekend too. I was just trying to concentrate on prom, and then they threw. Thank God, my husband took care of all the Easter stuff, so he's even did.
I wish it was prom. It's prom.
My husband
dark
did this
prom for me
to hide the eggs this year. He's just putting money in, but he's putting money and like little hints on where to find the other eggs. And he was reading me today the hints on where the other eggs were going. And I'm like, he's like, do you get it? And I'm like, no, I have no clue what that is. He's like, oh, the girls will get it. The girls will get it. And I'm like, no, I don't think they will. But
doesn't matter, Jen. At least they're
doesn't matter. It'll be fun.
So cute. So cute.
So,
all right. Until next time, remember, lock your doors.
And keep passing by those open windows.
Bye-bye.
Love ya. Happy Easter. Today's episode was researched and written by me, Jen. For more information about this episode, as well as all other sources, please check out our show notes or the podcast website at ourtruecrimepodcast.com. Our True Crime Podcast is developed and created by the hosts, Jen and Cam. Original music and audio mix of all our True Crime Podcast episodes is courtesy of Nico Vertesi from We Talk of Dreams. You can reach Nico at wetalkofdreams.com. Listener discretion is provided by Edward October from OctoberPod VHS. You can find all of his great works on YouTube. Please make sure to like and subscribe to our True Crime Podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. We can be reached on Instagram and Facebook at Our True Crime Podcast or on Twitter with the handle at Our True Crime Pod. You can also email us at ourtruecrimepodcast@gmail.com. We would also at this time like to thank our patrons. We would be so lost without you. Thank you so much. And if you would like to help support the show, you can check us out on patreon.com/OurTrueCrimePodcast. You can also show your support by leaving a 5-star review on Apple or simply just tell your friends about us. It's that easy. Love ya.
Hey, I'm Courtney.
And I'm Amanda.
And this is A Nefarious Nightmare, now officially partnered with Darkcast Network.
We cover true crime and the paranormal. We raise awareness about the senseless acts committed against victims. We won't go easy on the offenders, but show serious empathy to the victims.
And sometimes we dive into some weird topics outside of true crime, like the paranormal or even conspiracy theories.
Our listeners are definitely the best, and we are their biggest fans.
So join us. Come on in. All are welcome. Let's dive into these cases. You can find us on any podcast platform and on YouTube. Be sure to find us, hit subscribe, and share us with your friends.
We do have great life advice, such as don't be a Richard.
Yes, and wear deodorant. We don't want to smell you.
But all are welcome to A Nefarious Nightmare.